Okay, one more time. So the objective here is to make this clip and this clip look very different in that this one is daytime, this one is nighttime. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a gradient, and the gradient is going to selectively darken the sky, and it's going to leave the bottom part relatively unaffected, because that's what the three-way color corrector is going to do. So first things first, load up the clip, and this time I'm just going to darken across all three tonal areas, and I'm going to give it a much bluer look because it's day for night, and day for night is supposed to look very blue. And it's also supposed to look more desaturated. Okay, so that's step one. Now that's not looking bad, but it's still giving me a very daytime looking sky. So I go into my effects, video generators, render, custom gradient, drag that over on top, load it up to change the actual gradient. I want it to go from dark blue at the top to white at the bottom. I want to have a Gaussian blur, and I want to change it from, instead of left to right, top to bottom. And I want it to start a little bit higher up because I want the effect to only happen on the top part of the clip here, so I'll put in minus 400, and that should be good to go. Okay, so the gradient is sitting on top of the clip, and if I use a composite mode of multiply, it will multiply that blue color at the top of the gradient by the original clip to give a darker version, and where there's white at the bottom of the gradient, it's only multiplying by a value of 1, and anything multiplied by 1 basically is itself. So the bottom part remains unaffected, whereas the top part becomes darkened. So darken that a little bit more, and now we have a daytime and a nighttime. Now I'm going to actually show another way that you can use this gradient as a post-production gradiated filter. So on a camera, if you had a camera that could hold gradiated or gradient filters, you can selectively darken the sky and give it a particular color, and then leave the bottom part of your shot unaffected. So I'm going to import a new piece of footage for this. It's up in footage and HDV test. I can use this clip. This clip should be a good example of a shot that needs shall take in the folder. Okay, so this shot has some nice foreground areas. The background is okay. The top part of the sky possibly too bright. I might want to selectively darken just the sky and leave the bottom part of the clip unaffected. Again, this is a good example of where you can use your gradients. Oops. Now this time what I'll do is I give it a warm color. I have to take in the wrong gradient there. I wanted custom gradient. Custom gradient gives you a lot more control than a simple gradient. So again, same idea as the last time. This time I wanted to start this time with a kind of a brownish kind of yellow color, and we'll work from there and go to white, top to bottom, and I wanted to start much higher up. Now this time I don't want so much of the clip affected, so I'm going to decrease the gradient width so that it becomes much narrower. And where you see that kind of bright band there, you can get rid of that then by putting Gaussian, and it'll give it a much smoother gradient. Okay, so color to white, again when you use multiply, it's going to have a particular effect, and that effect is going to be that it only darkens the area underneath the gradient and leaves the rest of the clip unaffected. So you can go back in then and you can excuse me, load up the gradient itself, and you can start playing around with how that is applied. So you could also give it a kind of a, again, a blue tint if you wanted, which doesn't really work. So I'll go back over to this side of the color wheel. Usually what you find is you get that kind of warm brown color. Okay, so now you've got a kind of a warm sunset kind of hue added to the top part of the sky, and that's just done purely by using the gradient. Now just before I finish up on this, there are other ways that you can use composite modes to affect the colors of your clips, and in a different way to the way I've just shown you, you can use a duplicate of a single clip. So what I'll do is I'll get back my guy with the car there before any color corrections have been made. What you can use those composite modes, but instead of using a gradient, you actually duplicate the original clip, and then you can use certain composite modes. Some work, some don't, but if you use something like overlay, you'll see that you get a particular look. It darkens the darks, brightens the white parts, and gives you a certain kind of a high contrast look. If you set it to add, then it's going to kind of blast out the clip, and it's going to give you a very kind of a burnt out look. But sometimes the burnt out look is actually what you're after, and you can basically just play around with each one of these composite modes to see which one gives you the one that you're looking for. So multiply then kind of does the opposite of add. Now these aren't substitutes for color corrector 3-way. These are just certain effects that you can sometimes apply to give you a little bit more of a dynamic change to the colors rather than just darkening or just lightening. You can create some interesting effects using those blend modes. And the last thing then that you could do is play around with your filters. So there's a lot of filters here in the glow section, for example, that will allow you to play around with the colors, but again in a completely different way. So the glow filter will allow you to set a certain threshold and parameters within your image, and then you can apply this kind of this very ethereal kind of feel to the sky here, for example. So you can see the effect there. Okay, so that's some slightly more creative uses of color in video.